Well, definitely expect a lot of carbs because Vietnam is a noodle country. Noodle soups, noodle dishes galore, and also really good rice dishes with a lot of fresh herbs. Really, really good coffee. Coffee flavored rocket fuel, what it is.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Friendly Faces, Amazing Places. I'm your host, Sarita. So, I've been getting a lot of Snapchat flashbacks, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, on the app Snapchat, every now and then it'll give you a flashback to a picture you took a year ago, 2 years ago, however long ago. I've been getting flashbacks from when I was in Japan a year ago, and it makes me so sad because I can't travel, but also so grateful and happy for the memories I have from Japan. After traveling in Japan for 3 weeks, I went to Taiwan for a week, and I love Taiwan. I really want to go back. You've heard me rant about it before in previous episodes. While I was in Taiwan, I met today's guest, Tianyi. Tianyi is definitely one of the most interesting women I've ever met. She's a creative, she's a traveler, she's an inspiring person, and a great conversationalist. In this episode, Tianyi shares her backstory and what motivated her to move to Vietnam. We talk about the types of cultural differences she's noticed when traveling to different parts of the world, and what kind of meaning we can draw from different perspectives on lifestyle and travel. In this episode, you'll also find out what pear soup is. So stick around and enjoy the episode. Tianyi, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here. Can you please introduce yourself however you like?
I was born in China and I grew up in America, in Virginia Beach, actually, and I moved to New York when I was 17 for university, and I lived there for 8 years. And then I moved to Vietnam, where I've been living for the past 3 years, working as an English teacher and also traveling in the Southeast Asia slash East Asia area.
So, it sounds like you would maybe call a couple different places home. Um, could you pick one of them and tell us something you'd recommend to see if someone were to visit that place?
Well, Vietnam is definitely where I consider home right now. And if you come visit, I think you should go to Dalat. I'm a huge fan of Dalat because it's not that hot. That rhymed. Because in these Southeast Asian countries, it can get very, very humid and really, really hot. But in Dalat, it's in the mountains, and it's where they grow a lot of coffee and strawberries, and famous for avocados as well. So it's nice to get out of the heat, and it's just a much more manageable city compared to Ho Chi Minh City, where I live, and Hanoi, uh, which are the two biggest cities. Gelato is just really cute. It's got a lot of cafes. Yeah, it's more manageable, and it's got great countryside too. If you go outside of the city, beautiful forests and farmland, mountains. Yeah, you should definitely check that place out if you go to Vietnam.
I want to ask you more about like your background and yourself, but first, since this is a podcast about people I've met while traveling, can you tell us how did you and I meet?
We met in this small city, seaside city called Hualien. That's in Taiwan. And I believe it was a really rainy night, and we were both going out to dinner separately, and we both ended up in the same famous dumpling or steamed bun restaurant that all the tourists go to because it's just really, really good. And it was raining really hard, and we were both soaked. And even though I am Chinese, my literacy isn't as high, so I had a hard time reading the menu. So I got my order first, and then I saw you come in to the restaurant, and you also obviously don't read Chinese. And I think you were the only other foreigner in the restaurant, and I just waved you over
Yeah.
because obviously you wouldn't know that I'm a foreigner because I'm Chinese. And I was like, yeah, just come sit here, have a chat, and order what I'm having because it's really good. and that's that. We just started talking, had a lovely evening, chatting together. And it continued to rain for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, it was a really cool evening from my perspective. I remember stopping in that shop because it was raining. Like I didn't know anything about it, and I got in there and yeah, I don't know. I know so little Chinese. And so when you helped me order, it was just like such a godsend. Um and yeah, it was amazing and I loved getting to know you that night, and I'm excited to like share you with people who are listening. So, yes, that's how we met in Taiwan. Could you tell us what kind of traveler are you? Like, do you consider yourself a pretty experienced traveler? Are you a solo traveler?
I do most of my traveling alone, although I'm not opposed to traveling with another person. I usually, and I also very rarely stay in hostels. I've discovered I stayed in my first hostel, like dorm hostel, when I was in Singapore, and it's only because of, it's like so expensive in Singapore to get my own room. But I usually get to a place and I find another traveler who's also traveling solo and, strike up a fast friendship, a travel friendship, and then we go off and do stuff together. In a city, I'm less inclined to do something like that because I usually get into the groove of walking around, like walking all day long and doing my own thing, and it's also just really easy to navigate. But if I'm somewhere that's more countryside, like mountain and beach area, I like to make friends with other people, and we go off on the motorbike to, go to other scenic areas. That seems to be the way that I approach a lot of my solo travels.
I'm also the kind of person who, in the city, I like to just walk around all day and do my own thing. But I also like to meet people a lot. Um, I'm curious about a little bit about like your backstory. Have you always traveled your whole life, or when did you start?
My traveling began when I was about 23 because I was working in the fashion industry, and I at that point in my career it was really taking off, and I was going a lot of places internationally for work. My first work trip was in Asia, and I was visiting factories. So I went to Hong Kong, southern China, Korea, Vietnam, and that was amazing. And that was the year that I really started to travel aggressively. Before, I had absolutely no clue what traveling internationally was going to be like. I didn't even know what a visa was, and I didn't know what it meant to check in at the airport. And after that first work trip, and I saw, this is how it's done, and it's actually quite simple and very easy. I was like, oh, I can do this by myself. And then afterwards, I went on my first solo trip to Jamaica. That was wild. I had no clue what I was doing, actually. And then after that, more and more work trips. I went to LA, and then I went to Europe to the, London, Paris, Milan thing. Uh, and then, yeah, I started traveling with one of my best friends. We went to Arizona. Well, I mean, that's not outside the States, but we also went to Brazil and then Iceland and Mexico. And that's when it all just, like, I caught the travel bug. Yeah, and then after that, a few years later, when I moved to Vietnam and decided to change my life, I just continued traveling. And in Southeast Asia, it's so easy and much cheaper, and all the countries are so close together. Uh, yeah, so that's the rest is history. I've been traveling ever since. Traveling and working. I mean, my home base is still in Vietnam. I do, work at a school, and my schedule is really flexible, so it allows me to take off basically whenever I want. And yeah, go on a trip in another country close by.
Could you tell us a little about I personally find like people's um just their like journeys through life so interesting, and could you talk a little bit more about how I know you used to work in fashion and now you teach English, but you're also you illustrate, right? Like what inspired you to move out of fashion into teaching English? And what do you want to do in the future? And how does that relate to your travels?
Well, I wanted to be a fashion designer since I was a little girl, and I have a feeling that a lot of little girls have this exact same dream. But I pursued it, and I went to school at Parsons, the New School for Design, specifically to study fashion, and I got a job afterwards. And I had a great career. It's one of those things when you realize your childhood dream is it's a childhood dream and they don't always stick for the rest of your life. And I needed to make a choice to change things up and be honest with what I wanted, like how I wanted to live my life, because I just wasn't into the career that I was building anymore. And it was affecting my health, both mental and physical. And I needed, I mean, it's not like I had a dream to become an English teacher either. That is actually a vehicle for me to figure things out. And I didn't want to volunteer somewhere. I actually wanted to get into another profession that made good money. I thought about joining the Peace Corps actually in South America, and I decided not to because I'd rather have a salary instead of not making any money for 2 years. And yeah, I had a lot of pent up creative energy towards the last year in my job in fashion because I just felt like I didn't have enough creative freedom. And this goes with so much. I mean, when you are a designer and you are a creative spirit, and then you get into your profession, like your job, and you're supposed to use that creative spirit like and tailor it just for the job. I mean, this is something that you have to do anyways. And when I go back into the design field, I will have to do that again. But I thought at my age, and I exited fashion when I was 25, and I started when I was 21, and I had so many ideas and so much pent-up creative energy and no outlet for the rest of it, and also not much extra time to really nurture a new project and the energy. So I wanted to move to Vietnam to have a different lifestyle where I had a lot more extra time to channel that creative energy and see what I can do with it to create something productive. And the first 2 years, I'll just say it was incredibly difficult. First year and a half, because I decided to change everything. It wasn't just changing a job. It was everything. And that was my choice, and it was a hard one. It's not a choice for everyone, obviously. But yeah, I had to get used to a new country, a new culture, a new profession, like an entirely new profession, and also figure out what to do with all this creative energy. So I experimented with writing, and that was the thing that I really that was really drawing me, was writing. But then after I started writing, and I was spending most of my free time doing that and just writing anything and everything. I also had this other side of me, the visual side, the design and illustration side, that was also energy that was not being used. So again, I had this problem of having this pent-up creative energy and very little focus. Like, yeah, you're interested in writing, but you also need to have a project, have some type of goal. It's like, am I going to write a collection of poems? Am I going to write a short story? Am I going to write a novel? And I experimented with a lot of these different projects, and none of them really stuck. I think I finished one project, and after I finished, I was like, well, this sucks. This is not good writing, because I was so new to it, and you got to practice, but of course the first 10,000 or 50,000 words are just complete crap, and I just had to get through that first hurdle so I can find my voice. And I think in my time in Indonesia, where I spent a couple of months just writing, like that was my main focus, I finally was able to find my style. And I'm really excited about fine-tuning that and exploring that more. And also, there's the visual side because what I'm working on now is a graphic novel. So it's got the story and it's got the visuals to support it. The visuals are easier in the sense that I already, like, this is what I'm trained in, is in design, but it's still a hard job because it has to be up to par. I don't like half-assing this kind of thing, especially when it's like the reason why I moved to Vietnam. I wanted to find out what it is that I love to do. What am I good at? What are the skills that I want to learn? And I finally found this project that is long and hard, but it's something that I really want to give my best shot at. And it's important to me as a creative person to have complete creative control at least once in my life. Because after I'm finished with this, I'm going to go back into the design field. And I'm not going to have complete creative control. I'm going to be working for somebody.
As like a creative myself, I understand that like you have that like just creative energy bubbling up and you don't know where to put it, but you want to put it somewhere. I don't think that just moving to a foreign country is something that anyone could do, like that. They just have an urge. Like, what do you think are the biggest things you've learned from like setting out in a whole new country on your own? And I don't want to say like why isn't it for everyone, but like what do you have to make it work?
I think you have to have good reasons. That's what kept me going. Some people, the people I've met who moved to Vietnam, well, some of them are just free spirits. I mean, that's a very broad term, but and like I mean, you could argue that I'm a free spirit, but really, I don't think that I am. And some people are just, along for the ride, just traveling the world and on their path. And that is also a good reason. It's like, yeah, I want to see the world. I want to learn outside of the traditional education system because a lot of the people I met did not go to university. They just, save up their money. They want to travel. And traveling is a great way to learn. It really is. If you have an open mind, you have a curious mind, fantastic. In this day and age where in America it's so expensive to get a formal education, um, I totally understand the people who don't want to do it and they just want to go travel and then see what opportunities come by and then take it from there. I totally understand. Uh, to move to another country, you just have to have good reasons. And you have to accept that it's gonna be an interesting ride. It's not gonna go exactly as planned. I mean, my time in Vietnam actually did go according to plan. I got there, I did my teacher training, I got a job right after, I got an apartment right after, and I started working on what I really set out to do, which is to find an outlet for my creativity, like almost immediately after I moved into my apartment. Yeah, you gotta know what you want to do with all this time that you have in a day. And it helps to just have a curious mind, an open mind.
So, are you ready for the rapid fire?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so this section is around the world in 20 questions. Number 1, plan it or wing it?
Planet.
2, solo travel or group travel?
Solo. Every time.
Do you pack heavy or light?
Light.
Beaches or mountains?
Beaches.
Desert or rainforest?
Desert.
Oh,
Yeah.
why?
I don't like the rainforest. I don't. It's too many bugs. And it's too hot.
Cities or nature?
Oh, tough one. I guess cities.
Road trip or cruise?
Road trip.
What is your favorite food from travel?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Right? It's a hard question.
Answer. I love trying a new fruit. If it's like a really cool, just different fruit that I've never seen before, that I think that's pretty cool.
That is really cool. I love that answer. Oh my goodness. Um, Another hard one. What is your favorite drink from travel?
Favorite drink? Oh my God. I like pear soup. Is that a drink? Soup is a drink, right?
I mean, I don't know. You can call whatever you want a drink. What is pear soup?
It's from China.
Hmm.
I when I first had it, it was a dessert. It was on the dessert menu. And it was called pear soup, and it was presented in a bowl with a boiled pear in the middle, and it was surrounded by all the pear liquid, and it was so delicious. But then a couple years later, I went back to China in another restaurant, and they served it hot. It was a very cold, cold time in China. It was winter in the north, which is extremely cold, and I saw pear soup on the menu, and they presented it in a like a thermos, and we just
Oh.
had it like that, and it was so delicious and such a treat because you don't really find that in the States. Not really. Like pears aren't really the juice. It's usually like orange juice and grape juice and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I love that. I want to try that someday. What is the longest flight you've been on?
Hong Kong, New York. I used to do this flight all the time, 16 hours. I used to do that for work several times a year.
On a plane, would you rather sit next to a smelly person or a crying baby?
Oh, that's hard. I guess a smelly person really don't want to. I can't stand the crying. Well, oh, that's hard because then I can wear earplugs.
If you could attend a wedding anywhere in the world, what place or culture would it be in?
Hmm. I want to see an Indian wedding. I bet you get that answer a lot.
No, I haven't. I've heard really great things about Indian weddings and like Middle Eastern weddings. I just hear they're like really great parties. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. What is the coolest historical thing you've seen?
I don't know if this is historical. I wonder if this is cultural. But when I was in Nepal, I saw the Kumari Goddess.
Could
Do you
you
know?
elaborate on that? Yeah.
God, it's a real person, and Nepal
Oh.
be spiritual. They're Buddhist, but like Buddhist leaning towards Hindu as well. And the Kumari goddess is a little girl, selected from a bunch of other little girls, and her astrological charts have to be really specific, and she has to look a certain way. And she is selected when she's about 5 or 6, and she cannot touch. Like she is a goddess essentially. Like the planets have aligned just right for her birth. She's the goddess, and her feet cannot touch the ground until she hits puberty. She's locked away in the Kumari goddess house. It's like a apartment inside of a temple. Um, and other people take care of her. Her feet can never touch the ground. She is dressed a certain way. But essentially, from the age of like 5 or 6 up until puberty, she is locked away, and sometimes she makes an appearance to the worshippers below. I was there, and she only makes an appearance for like 5 seconds, and then she goes back inside. But this is like a real thing. I was in Kathmandu, and I saw a YouTube clip about the Kumari goddess, and I was like, I wonder if I'm going to see this, and I did, and I was kind of appalled that this was still going on because you're real like this is another human being. It's not just yeah and yeah, that was the coolest, I guess you could say. The coolest, definitely the oddest thing that I've seen.
The next question, a little bit later. Skydiving or scuba diving?
I've never been skydiving, but I am a scuba diver. Like I actually do it. I'm gonna go with skydiving. I want
All
to do it.
right.
It's
Would you rather take a cooking class or a ghost tour?
cooking class. I'm not into. I'm not into scary. I don't like scary stuff.
If you could take someone on a date anywhere in the world, what is the most romantic date spot you can think of?
A romantic date spot. Well, I can just tell you something that I have done.
Sure.
Uh, when I was on my lockdown in Indonesia, I was in a relationship on this island called Lombok, and we would get on the bike and go up any, beautiful hill overlooking the ocean and sit there and play chess for a couple of hours.
Wow.
I think as an activity, if you're going on a date, I love playing chess. And
Really?
yeah, because you're stripping things down to intellectual battle, and there are no words. You're not touching each other. It's just your mind versus my mind. If you're doing it on a cliff overlooking the ocean, it's even better. Just make sure your chessboard is a good one. The pieces don't blow away in the wind.
What is your favorite souvenir item that you've brought back from traveling?
It's funny that you say that because I don't know if this counts, but I'm in quarantine right now, and I had to take my temperature twice a day and send it somewhere. I don't know who's even receiving this. I'm just typing in random numbers at this point. I'm not even taking my temperature. But they gave me a thermometer. And it was like those old school, like mercury ones that you stick in your armpit. And I was like, I'm totally keeping this as a souvenir.
Wait, that's a perfect souvenir for like this moment in time. Oh my god. What is one essential thing you always pack other than your passport, your phone? Like, what is something that you personally need when you travel?
Earplugs.
Are you a light sleeper?
I think I'm just addicted to them. I started using them when I was in college, when I was like 17, and
Hmm.
it's it's a nice way to have something remain constant when you're traveling because the bed's different, the pillow's different, but your ears are still plugged up. So,
If your travels were made into a movie, what genre would it be?
oh God, it would be such a drama. Drama full of like, oh, just yeah, not like an eat, pray, love drama, but like all these existential things occur when I travel.
And the last question of the rapid fire is, if you could live anywhere in the world and money wasn't an issue, where would you live?
I haven't been to enough places, so I don't know. Oh, that's a tough one though.
Yeah.
Like I thought about living in Mexico, Japan, although I've never even been to Japan. I don't know. Thought about living in Greece.
Travel for some people is just a vacation, especially for a lot of Americans. We don't view travel in the way that I guess the travel community does.
Mhm.
But for others of us, we're like nomadic or we move to another country. And you talked about this a little bit before, but what impact has travel had on you as a person? How has it changed you as a person?
I think I'm friendlier.
Really?
Yeah, like when you're in a new place and you want to make a friend or if you need some help, you gotta be friendlier. Yeah. Um, and you gotta learn fast. Especially if you're on one of those trips where you're hitting up several different countries. The thing that gets me every time is the currency exchange because you gotta do math. It's like get used to converting a certain amount to the dollar and then you switch places and like in Vietnam it's 23,000 VND to the dollar. In Malaysia it's 5. And it's, when you and that's like an easy jump from like if you're on a Southeast Asia trip, like Vietnam to Malaysia, like that's an easy one. And you just get really thrown when you first arrive, and you're like, wait, how much does that cost? Like, oh, okay, right, I forgot that there's a different currency. And also when you're like switching from the left side of the road to the right side of the road, that gets me too.
I like literally the currency switching is the most relatable thing ever. Even when it is an easy conversion, it really trips you up.
You are figuring things out. When you just figure out how things work, figuring out public transport, which can be very intimidating. Uh, and yeah, the language thing I don't really mind because it doesn't matter where you go. I mean, it is a new language. Uh, but just going to a new place and just figuring out how things work is it's quite the education.
So I usually ask people if they have either money saving tips or like safety tips from travel.
I don't really eat in expensive places. Uh, yeah, and I don't drink alcohol. That helps if you want to save money. But I mean, alcohol and a coconut. I mean, I'd much rather have a coconut, and depending on where you are, they sometimes cost the same. Um, I think yeah, I just don't eat in extravagant places. And by extravagant, I actually mean like spending $6 or $7. In Southeast Asia, that's a lot. You can get a great meal for $2. You can get a great meal for $2. Yeah, accommodation, transport, and food, and whatever entrance fee I gotta pay, and that's it. I don't really go for extras.
Yeah, that's smart. Do you have any story that anything you feel comfortable sharing regarding like being a woman traveling alone or safety tips or anything about that?
Well, if you want to be really careful, make friends with the girls
Mm-hmm.
and hang out with girls. That helps. I mean, I've had a few instances, and I mean, they were all with men, where my safety was at risk. It was questionable when I was like, that could have gone really badly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but most of my experiences have been good.
I've asked this question to a few other women who I've had on the podcast, and I've actually never heard anyone say make friends with other women. Not that I can remember, at least. And that's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that's like actually a really really good tip. I remember a couple places where I've been where, specifically in Japan, I don't know, this memory really sticks out to me. This guy was just like would not leave me alone. Like it took so long to shake him, and I went in like the restroom and I found these Japanese girls and I like held up my Google Translate and I was like, please help me, this guy won't leave me alone, what do I do? I don't understand the culture like of how to like tell him no, because I kept saying no to him and he just wasn't getting it. And they were
Mm,
so sweet and they helped me like sneak out when he wasn't looking and everything, and it sucks that that's something that we have to go through, but I think it's so true that like there's just so much trust that we can have between women a lot of the time. So that's actually an amazing tip. Do you have any pet peeves about other travelers?
I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think
that's
so.
fair.
I mean,
That's
it's
fair.
most of the people I've met are really friendly, and if I don't like them, then well, okay, I mean, in Southeast Asia, there are certain people who just look and dress a certain way that I find really polarizing, and I just ignore them because I have a feeling that they're going to be high and drunk all the time, and I on these people because I am never high or drunk. Maybe the occasional mushroom or acid trip, but I like to keep a clear head. And if I'm around people who love that and it's very obvious because, they're dressed a certain way and they look a certain way and they behave a certain way, if that is really obvious, then I stay away from them. But I don't know if it's a pet peeve. I mean, they can do their thing. I'll just go do my thing and just stay away from you.
I guess I'm also curious, since you live in Southeast Asia, what I've noticed kind of is when I've been to Europe, I see Americans, but when I've been to South America, a lot fewer Americans. And then
Mhm.
I don't remember meeting any Americans in Taiwan uh, or Japan, although I didn't do a lot of extensive traveling in either country. Do you notice, like, what do you notice about the different nationalities of travelers in different parts of the world you've been to?
A lot of Germans, a lot of French, and specifically in Southeast Asia, I think there are a lot of Australians because it's so close, and not as many Americans. Yes, I have noticed that. That's why when you meet one, it's nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This next question is something I like to talk about because I experience a lot of mental health ups and downs while I'm traveling. Um, if you feel comfortable, of course. Do you ever struggle with mental health while traveling, and what do you do to stay on top of that?
Yes, I do struggle with mental health. I usually call up a friend. I call up my best friend who lives on the East Coast in America, and I talk it out. Sometimes I cry it out. Sometimes it's just a matter of having a better night's sleep. And yeah, I usually like to just call someone who I know and trust from home and talk that out. I hope most people have that.
Who is the most interesting person you have met while traveling?
Oh, I've met some interesting people. I mean, there's like the interesting, oh my God, I can't even begin. I know there's like the weirdest one that
Right.
sticks. I met a guy who has sex with horses. That was
Oh, that
interesting.
is weird. That is, yeah.
And he has plans to have sex with other animals as well in his lifetime.
Interesting. Does he
Hmm.
travel to do it, or is it just like a side hobby?
Uh, Actually, one of his goals, like the reason why he moved to this specific country, I'm just gonna keep it as, ambiguous. Like as he moved to this specific country because he loved this particular animal and wanted to spend as much time as possible with this particular animal. And then he told me like it's also one of his dreams to have sex with this animal.
Wow. How did you meet this person?
You just do. You just do. You strike up a conversation with another traveler, and yeah, I mean, this is like the weirdest one that sticks out to me. But for every, like, there are just amazing people. Like, I also met a woman on Lombok who is 57 and she's doing her dive master. She just finished, actually. And getting a dive master is like hard, like taxing on you physically. And she's amazing. Uh, I love talking to retired people. I love,
Really?
oh yeah, I love talking to like 70-year-olds who, this is where they live now, and I love hearing about their life and how they got here and any wisdom they have to share. I mean, and I don't have to be traveling to do that. I mean, I could be back in New York and also talking to someone retired. But yeah, like talking to retirees in Thailand or in Cambodia. That was great.
Yeah, I think it's so awesome because they probably have such an interesting story if they've ended up somewhere else in the world at that age.
Not all of them do.
Oh,
Not all.
really?
No, some of them have had completely boring humdrum lives where they did everything they were supposed to, and then when they retired, they decided to change their life, and some of it was because of weather and also money, because in Cambodia it's just so much easier to stretch your dollar. But a lot of them actually had very boring lives, and they're really happy to have this adventure in a foreign country, and like this is the interesting part of their life. That's the part that makes me excited. It's a whole other perspective of how to view retirement. This is when life is just getting good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way. I feel like there is such an emphasis on traveling being like a young person's thing, and older people just go on like, I don't know, resort or beach vacations, you know? But yeah, that's so interesting. What are some of the most significant cultural differences you've experienced?
Well, there's the religious one. In Indonesia, there's I didn't go to this wedding, but there was a wedding of a 16-year-old girl to an 82-year-old man. That was kind of hard to
Oh,
swallow.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is just because I just got out of Indonesia and I spent like 7 months in Lombok, so I got a deeper look into the culture. But some of it was really was alarming. Um, I don't like the kidnapping culture where a if a guy likes a girl, he kidnaps her and then she has to marry him.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
That's the thing.
Yeah, that's very jarring.
That's the thing. And nowadays, in where I was, they usually know each other, so it's planned.
Okay.
But I imagine like 50 years ago, I don't think it was so. I don't think it was like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that definitely makes me uncomfortable. I'm always trying to be very open about cultural differences and stuff, which is why I asked this question. But those are those are hard. Those are hard.
Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow.
Yeah, really it is. I'm curious what I've been in the United States for the last since March, so I've spent most of COVID in this country. What has it been like in Southeast Asia, I guess?
Where I was on Lombok, it was great. We had like almost complete freedom. We
Uh
didn't have
huh.
to wear, there aren't enough police to even enforce us to wear a mask.
Oh, wow.
Was an island, like, there was a domestic lockdown, so you couldn't travel island to island. I mean, you could, but you'd have to like bribe somebody. It was possible, but we just didn't want to do it. Yeah, the beaches were open. Went to the beach almost every day. I mean, the mountain was not like there's a volcano there that is a very popular hiking, trekking activity, but that was closed. The waterfalls were closed, but you can still get on your bike and drive through the hills on a cliff and through the rice paddies and stuff. A lot of restaurants were still open. Rent was cheap, like 20% the usual fee. Like my rent per month was $140. So I had a fine and dandy lockdown. I mean, I still had anxiety. I admit, I did
Mm-hmm.
still having like, when can I get? Because that's not my home
Mm-hmm.
either, and Vietnam's borders weren't opening anytime soon. They're still not technically open. And I did have those moments of anxiety when I was like, how long is this going to last? I want to get back to my life. Like that part doesn't change. The anxiety still stays. But yeah, I had almost complete freedom. Pretty much complete freedom.
Wow, that's that's so much different than how it was where I was for the last or where I am have been for the last 7 months, however long it's been. Yeah, it's crazy. I almost think that during a time like this, it would be nice to be somewhere really rural because you wouldn't have to worry as much.
Yeah.
Um, wow, I'm jealous. I know you were stuck there, but I'm still jealous.
There were villagers whose lives were not bothered at all. Their lives actually got better because they then this is like really, really remote. I didn't go to these places, I just heard about it. Because they just go fishing and they have their vegetables and they live, and the Indonesian government was giving about $30 a month to all of its households as like a welfare thing, and these farmers were like, they didn't even know what COVID was. They thought Corona was a really rich philanthropist who was giving money to everyone. Then they were like, they were talking to Western, the foreigners who were visiting. They were like, "Thank if you meet Corona, please thank him for me for this money." Like they didn't even know what was going on. It's like their lives didn't change, and they have some extra money from this Corona person.
What is the biggest lesson or takeaway that you've learned from travel?
It's important to already have the things that you like to do. Like you are taking in the rest of the world, but you still, like, essentially you are still inside your head. I like to read. I love visiting bookstores when I'm traveling. Um, that is a constant, but uh, essentially you just gotta pay attention to what's going on inside because there's inside your head because there's an equally interesting journey going on in there. It's not just your surroundings, it's what you're how you're going to process this new information. So when you hear about, people, the Kumari Goddess, when you hear about girls getting married to 82-year-old men, what's going on inside? How do you process all this information? Because this is just information swirling around you, and you are a foreigner. Like you don't belong in. You're a visitor, and there is, if you have a curious mind and you want to learn about the cultures and the history, just pay attention to how you're processing this information, because that's really the thing that matters. And it's like why it's not just about these new experiences and like going to the temples and the whatever. Like what's going on inside your head?
I just want to quote all of that. I feel like it's so great. So I ask all of my guests this: is travel for everyone?
Mm, no,
No?
maybe.
Maybe.
I
Why?
don't know.
Why?
Because I think about certain Americans who just stay exactly where, like, within the radius of their neighborhood their whole lives, and it's not something that I would do. But at the same time, if they're happy with what they have this peace of mind that I don't think is very consistent with travelers. I think with travelers, you have to deconstruct the concept of home. And for the other type of person that I just mentioned, they don't have to do that, and they know exactly where the space that they occupy on Earth. And not everyone has that. And I think that's something that we shouldn't, that travelers should turn their nose to, because it's very easy to have the attitude like, oh, this person never goes outside their comfort zone, this person has never seen the world and doesn't want to experience things. I'm like, you know what, that's their choice, and they know the space that they occupy. And I think that's actually really important, because with travelers it can be so transient, which can be exhausting on you mentally. Forget the long, it can be so transient, and you can feel like you never belong anywhere. And a sense of belonging, I think, is actually really important. Uh, and there are those who don't want to let go of that, and I don't blame them.
I used to be one of those people who like resents the people who never want to go anywhere or do anything, and now I'm like, well, they're happier than I am when I go do things.
Yep.
So why judge them for that? I'm curious, just to follow up real quick on that idea of like uh, you said like travelers have to interrogate what home means. How have you done that in your own travels?
I adapt really well to my surroundings in terms of, like, if this is my hotel for the next couple of days. I get really comfortable really quickly. Um, I say that Vietnam is my home, but technically I don't even feel like I have a home anymore. I feel like I have completely deconstructed the concept. Which means that you have to be more comfortable with yourself. And I'm not entirely there yet. Like I just got through, I've just been through this roller coaster ride of a lockdown in Indonesia. Um, I think you just need to be more comfortable with yourself and realize that this is the head and the body that you're in when you're going on your journey in life, in the world, and to be be nice to yourself. It's hard. It's hard for some people to be nice to themselves. I can be very hard on myself. Because the whole like be nice to yourself, I feel like is something that's, especially with all the self-help talk that's flying around social media these days. It's just to pay attention with what's going on in your head. Uh, and you have to think about why you feel out of place when you're in a new place and establish certain constants. Like it's not just about, me sleeping with earplugs, but like I will always be reading something. Sometimes it's or maybe some people have a travel journal. You have to have certain things that are constant. That helps a lot when you're moving around and calling a different country like every week, your home. Have some constants. Have the things that you always like, and helps to have a hobby, or like say you love coffee, or you want to like something that you just really like to do and do it wherever you are. That helps a lot when you don't know where your home is or when your home is constantly changing. I met I met this woman in Bali who's a business owner, but she also moves around a lot, and she has a 7-year-old daughter, and she has this enormous. I mean, I would never travel like this because I pack light, but she has like this like family time capsule thing that she takes with her everywhere, and she calls it her anchor, and it's like family photos and
Interesting.
little. Yeah, it was a lot of stuff, though I wouldn't do it, but it's like framed photos too, like heavy stuff. And she's like, every time we move, I take all this stuff with me and we display it wherever we are. And when we feel off balance, we look at that to remind ourselves who we are. That was her tip, which will have modified per person because she's married with a kid and she's a business owner and she moves house, whereas most of us are living out of our backpacks. Yeah, to find your own anchor.
You have to be your own home sometimes, and
You
it's so
do.
true. So after being in Vietnam for a while, or I guess once travel opens up again, where do you want to go next?
I want to go to Japan. That was on the list. And I still have to go back to Indonesia because I have a dive trip booked back in January that I couldn't go. But that's still paid for, and I still want to do it. So I'll be going to Indonesia again to go to Komodo, get my diving in. And then, yeah, I do still want to go to Japan and Korea, which was supposed to be done on this trip, but I couldn't do it. It would be nice to go to Australia and New Zealand, but if I don't get there, it's okay. Would love to go back to Thailand. I'm actually not as familiar with Thailand as I want to be. It's also a great place if you want to have any medical procedure done. Yeah, I've known quite a few people who have had like knee replacements in Thailand, and it's a solid country for medical tourism. Like I will probably do that for my, whenever I have to replace my IUD. Like I'm going to Thailand.
I've heard the same thing about Costa Rica. I've heard a lot of
Hmm.
people go there for like cosmetic type surgeries
Hmm.
and or for like dental work. Apparently it's just like a lot cheaper there, but like they have really good healthcare. So, anyways, tip for the listeners who need that surgery. If you could recommend one place for people to see in their lifetime, what would it be?
Mm, one place for people to see in their lifetime. You know, this is not really a place, but I think because I love the ocean and I am a scuba diver, and you don't necessarily have to scuba dive because it's not for everyone, especially if you have sinus problems. But if you can find a really beautiful spot to go snorkeling, like a really like world class like corals and tropical fish, if you can find one of those places, do it. It's not a specific place to travel. There are plenty of those. But I just recall when I was in Borneo, Malaysian Borneo, and there was this area. It's a protected area, and it is expensive to get there. But you didn't even have to go diving. You could just snorkel, and you could see the most amazing things. So another good place, go to certain islands in the Philippines that are great for snorkeling. Go to certain islands in Thailand. Yeah.
Tianyi, it has been so great to talk to you. It's amazing that we met just for one night and that we're having these awesome conversations here. And I'd love to hear about your experience and your journey. And I can't wait to see what is in your future and all the creative work that you'll have to share it with me because I'm looking forward to it. But thank you so much for sharing all your insights on the podcast today. Thanks for listening to yet another episode of Friendly Faces, Amazing Places. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and as always, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube at Friendly Faces, Amazing Places Podcast. Ciao!